Welcome to Divisive Issues, the foul-mouthed, spoiler-filled comic book podcast where two fans and two non-fans talk about controversial or noteworthy comic books and comic book history. I'm Ryan.
I'm Sly.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Daryl.
We made it.
we made
it for another episode.
Yes. We did.
Yes.
So for this episode, we're going to be talking about a comic I think I mentioned on the show a few times, Kraven's Last Hunt.
Yes.
Yeah, so...
I don't remember you mentioning that much, because when it came up, when you were like, I want to do Kraven's Last Hunt, I was like, what? Who? Like, I knew Kraven from the Spider-Man, but you've never mentioned Kraven at all, so this is another one of those, like, oh my god, this Sly, like, is he in love with yet another character that, like, I didn't know? Like, I'd be like, look at this funny guy in his, like, leopard shirt, he's so goofy, and then you would, like, blow up on me? I didn't know.
Exactly that, yes.
Yes, exactly that. Also, our very last episode before we joined Network was Spider-Man Reign. And Kraven showed up during that, and I think you specifically, Daryl, were like, who is this fucking guy in the leotard? He sucks. Yeah. And I said, Kraven's one of my favorite characters, you shut the fuck up, Daryl.
That makes sense. Okay.
I had never heard about him, and I don't even remember Spider-Man Reign. But I was pleasantly surprised.
Radioactive sperm, Spider-Man Reign.
That's all I remember from that. I don't remember
Spider-Man
anything
sperm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just the logistics of it. So, this is a crossover between the three Spider-Man books at the time, but it's the same creative team for everything. So it's really just like they released issues very quickly. Even it's not like so much a crossover.
This is a crossover of three different Spider-Man books?
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically, it was just one story going through all three books, but the reason they did that was because they don't want... They don't give a shit about this now anymore at all. They want the story to not... They don't want people who are reading only spectacular or only amazing to be the story's not important because it's only happening as a story. Now they don't give a shit about it at all. Yeah. You could have a main character die in Amazing Spider-Man, and he's still alive in other Spider-Man books, and they don't give a shit. But back then they actually cared about making the illusion seem real.
When there's multiple Spider-Man books, they... are the same character? They're Peter Parker?
Yeah, basically just different writers. Like, basically, different writers doing their own Spider-Man stories, and a lot of times they have their own different, like they focus on different aspects of his life, like his different supporting characters or whatever.
It's sort of like with the Batman stuff, like Detective Comics and Batman, and then Batman and Robin.
Yeah, exactly. So that's like the best.
It's Spider-Man, and Spider-Man.
Yeah, because like Batman, like usually Batman focuses more on like the supervillain stuff, and Detective Comics is more of the grounded solo guy. That's not always the case, but like it is more often that where it's like detective stories versus superhero stories. But Spider-Man doesn't really have like. They're usually just like, here's just three Spider-Man books. And
he's just more
Spider-Man things.
I'm just going to say at the top of this that sucks that they split this story up between three different like comics. Like, I get that again, that's like the industry. They want you to like buy all these different versions of Spider-Man. But this story is like, it I feel like it needs to be told together. That it just like sucks that it's like, it's 100% mandatory that you have to read this in order.
So the only reason why I don't mind it here is because I find crossovers to be really jarring and annoying when there's lots of different writers like competing for the tone of the story. Mm-hmm. But this is J.M. DeMatteis writing every issue and Mike Zeck drawing every issue. Mm-hmm. And basically, so it's Web of Spider-Man 3132, Amazing 293, 294, and Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man 131, 132. But in this case, because it's the same creative team and it's marketed and billed as like, here's the checklist for the story, it's really just like they told a 6-issue story in 2 months instead of 6 months, which like when it's done this way, I think it makes more sense because you're just getting the book more often. But like there's so many times where, like Sly said, you'll have a major death here and then the other book, they don't disappear for another 3 months while editorial like catches them up and like things like that are very annoying. But here it actually like, I mean, I wasn't around in 1987, so I don't know how confusing it was, but I assume they made it really clear, like, you're just getting this one Spider-Man story every week instead of every month.
And also, the story was also written in advance. It was written as one cohesive story, well in advance, because J.M. DeMatteis was actually pitching the story for many years. It was originally supposed to be, not originally, first it was supposed to be a Wonder Man story, but then he wanted to change it to a Batman story with the Joker instead of Kraven. That's why I bitched about Spider-Man Reign, because when I said Spider-Man Reign is a ripoff, I kept thinking of Kraven's Last Hunt, which took that space open from Batman The Dark Knight Returns, instead of just telling the same exact story with just name swapped, Batman.
Yeah.
It told a completely different story using that same tone and same dark atmosphere.
Yes. And we've talked about DeMatteis many times before. He's one of my faves.
Like one of those guys like a Loeb where it's like he's really good and he's also really bad?
No, he's generally pretty good. I've never read a story where I'm like, wow, he's terrible.
You guys hated Scooby-Doo Apocalypse, but overall, what DeMatteis is generally like, well, he goes from like his lighthearted, funny stuff, and then his like very more like philosophical, poetic stuff.
Yeah, this was poetic and philosophical more than most other comics, to the point where I was like, is this fucking Grant Morrison? But like, it wasn't crazy enough, so I was like, it can't be Grant Morrison. But
like there's no really crazy imagery in this. Everything's very like cohesive and held together here.
But it reminded me of that style where it's like it's going for the dramatic.
It's more like prose than it is like just like comic narration where it's like, and then Spider-Man swung to the nearest rooftop.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anyone ever has an interest in that kind of style, like DeMatteis' indie work, like they just published a book that he wrote around the same time called Moonshadow that they like just collected in this beautiful hardcover, and he writes a lot of really, really cool, like even his like Hal Jordan Spectre run has a lot of like deep Eastern philosophies in it, and his Dr. Fate is very similar. Like he writes a lot of really, really cool stuff, but he also has the like goofy side that he did with like Justice League International, and like, you know, like the Scooby-Doo Apocalypse has like more campy stuff in it, and he's a writer that is very, very diverse, and I think he's like one of the greatest comic writers ever because of that.
I felt like we had read DeMatteis before, but I couldn't like pin it, and the fact that it was Scooby-Doo Apocalypse, I'm like, I'm pretty impressed. Which just reminds me, it's like I feel like you need to show me someone's like good stuff to really get me to remember them rather than like their bad stuff. So I'm like, ugh.
He's written a lot of different stuff, and he's the kind of writer that like never got the like A-list book that he deserved, but that almost kept him great. Like we've talked about this like with Peter David
and Wade, where I feel like they'd make movies after his books.
Yeah, but he's the kind of guy, like when he takes over a book, even when it's a book that nobody cares about, he adds this certain like style to it that he really goes out of his way to capture the tone of the characters, but always pushes them forward. So like it never feels like filler to me when it's DeMatteis, but he always like goes out of his way to make the book fit and isn't like, this is my take. Oh, he also did Spider-Man: The Lost Years.
Yeah, I was saying
you guys did.
He did Lost Years.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah all right.
And when I defend the Clone Saga, I'll defend it up to the point because the Clone Saga went for so long, almost all the original writers left before it finished. So I defend it like up to the halfway point when DeMatteis leaves, and like most of the good stories dry up. But DeMatteis is the main reason why I defend Clone Saga. I think it's underrated as
The Lost Years was with
Ben Reilly.
Ben Reilly.
Ben Reilly,
and DeMatteis said he thinks Ben Reilly is a better character than Peter Parker, and I agree.
I'm not gonna disagree about that either. I like Ben Reilly too, and
the other thing I just wanted to say is DeMatteis also, he writes a lot of the animated DC stuff too. Like he wrote a lot of the Justice League Unlimited stuff, like specifically for The Man Who Has Everything, which is the only Alan Moore adaptation that Alan Moore doesn't hate. So like he's the kind of guy that when they need somebody, he comes in and does a really great job. Like for Clone Saga is a perfect example where like they wanted to shake up Spider-Man and they put in DeMatteis and he put a lot of heart into it. And it's like, it's a shame that era is so lambasted, because the first chunk of it that DeMatteis writes is like fantastic. Like The Gift, which was like the Amazing Spider-Man 400, which is like a big Aunt May Spider-Man issue, is like one of the best Spider-Man issues ever written, but it's in the middle of a bunch of clone stuff, so nobody ever talks about it.
So just to explain a little bit, that's an issue where Aunt May dies, and it was where the character should have died. Like, it's a perfect ending for that character. She should have died there, but the reason why like they probably changed it was because Ben Reilly shows up during it. And for like trades or whatever, you can't just have Spider-Man's clone show up and be like, "Hey, I'm here." So
well, no, but it wasn't really Aunt May. It was an actress hired by Norman Osborn.
Oh my god.
So dumb.
That's not DeMatteis' fault that Marvel did that. He wrote an amazing story and they fucked it up.
Yeah. It's like with most things where it's like you have like the death of Captain Marvel and you're like, what a great story. And it's like if they bring them back, it doesn't make the story like worse or anything. It's just like, it just sucks that they did that.
Yeah. I'll always love Final Fantasy X despite what Final Fantasy X-2 did to it.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say that I really like the clone stuff. Like you heard me gush about like Ben Reilly, like that specific like clone issue, and then like I wasn't on board with the rest of his. Kraven's Last Hunt, I was on board from start to end. It was like it's a great, was it 6-issue story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was, the whole ride really intrigued me. And I didn't get to a point where I was like, this is like too, like there's a rat guy that appears and he's very comic booky, but he serves a purpose within the story I wasn't expecting. Like when he first appears, I'm like, God damn Rat Man in the sewers. But then it's
He's like Gollum.
Yeah. But he adds like an interesting flavor to it because he's kind of like a pawn between like the two major players of this Spider-Man and Kraven.
Yeah. And one thing I just want to say about Mike Zeck, because he's the artist on here.
Ooh, he's so good.
He's so
good. He's so good. And he's somebody that doesn't have nearly as large of a bibliography as DeMatteis does, but some of the things that I think are really interesting about him is he had a long run of Captain America with DeMatteis. That's when he created that Ratman vermin. But one of the main things that he's known for is he actually was the one who created the black and white costume for Spider-Man.
I didn't know that.
Cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
he drew Secret Wars.
Go ahead.
That's a pretty big moment for Spider-Man.
I thought the black and white costume was the Venom symbiote.
It was.
That hasn't happened yet.
No, that did happen.
Okay, so yeah.
When they created the symbiote, that was supposed to be like Spider-Man's new cool 80s look. And even when they got rid of the symbiote itself, they wanted to keep that look. And he kept that costume for most of the 80s until Venom came up. And basically, Venom attacked Mary Jane, and Mary Jane said, "Yeah, you can't wear that costume anymore." Like it triggers.
Is it like sentient? Is the
no? This is just him wearing a costume modeled after the symbiote costume.
Okay.
So basically, because Peter Parker is the inner nerd in all of us, what happened was he gets this costume, and for like right after he gets it, there's a long story where he realizes it's an alien, and then like Reed Richards takes it, but Black Cat thinks it's like kind of sexy, so he's like, you know what, I'll keep a black costume, but this is just a regular costume that he wore for, like Sly said, for all the 80s.
Okay.
And that brings us to the context of this story. The previous issue, Peter and MJ have just gotten married, and this is what happens immediately after.
Yeah.
And then like 5 or 6 issues later, Venom shows up and kidnaps Mary Jane, and it's terrible. So the story's good, but like it's terrible for her. So they don't have the nicest honeymoon era.
Yeah. And so just to briefly explain Kraven for people who don't know, he was like a goofy guy in a loincloth.
Loincloth and like a leather vest or a leopard vest, leopard spotted vest.
I think I saw even like DeMatteis thought he was goofy. When
he is.
I couldn't find that. I couldn't find a quote. I couldn't find a quote from him now. But I remember him saying like he because like originally he was trying to fit into Spider-Man. He originally wanted to make a new villain, but then he was thinking about which old villains he could adapt to it. I always personally found Kraven kind of cool. But maybe it's because I watched the Spider-Man cartoon, and then when Batman Beyond ripped off this Spider-Man, pretty much they had their own like hunter type character. I just find that archetype really cool. It kind of is like who's the deadliest man of all? Game of all, it's man.
I also find Kraven to be really interesting because a lot of Spider-Man's villains have this very like animalistic totemic style to them. Like most of them are based around animals. And like that fits with the Spider-Man being like the more like creepy menace type to like society, that he's always like slinking around on the walls and everything. And then you have like Dr. Octopus, you have the Rhino, like Green Goblin is like a monster animalistic figure.
That's very
and then you
true.
have this
like
Scorpion.
all Flash's rogues are like, guys, I'm a captain. They're all majors.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like with Spider-Man, it's always been this like animalistic thing that they've explored in like the 2000s about like what that means from like a more totemic perspective. But having one villain be a hunter that like hunts and corrals a lot of these animals like throughout their history, I find to be really like visually appealing.
Yeah, it's cool too how his background is like his family was like Russian aristocracy that got overthrown in the Communist Revolution, I guess. And and he's like a hunter from like when you think of the old like 19th century British hunters, like the civilized man going to tame the savage wilds, but he's like, no, there's beauty in the wild. So he's like supposed to be like civilized guy, but also when he gets into the jungle, he's like, this is the true nature of man or whatever.
Yes.
And it's really cool. And he keeps quoting like British authors throughout this, like poets, like
yeah.
So the original name of this story, because they didn't want to spoil what the story's about. Like you can tell by the Kraven's Last Hunt title what's aiming towards.
Yeah.
But originally it was called.
But that wasn't originally the title.
It was called Fearful Symmetry.
Oh yeah, that's the line from that William Blake poem. That he keeps quoting throughout this.
So it's Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright, and the Frost of the Night, but they changed to Spider, Spider, Burning Bright, and the stuff about him being overthrown aristocracy. That was DeMatteis' idea, I believe, as well.
I was like gonna say, I'm like, I feel like that is that's like that that very specific author touch that you apply to a character. That's like, I come over from Russia and now I'm gonna hunt you, and instead it's like, actually my family was this and they fell.
So originally, as I mentioned in the last episode, Stanley fucking hates communists. He hates Russian communists. He just hates them so much. So that Kraven came from Russia just because goddamn commies. His half brother is actually the Chameleon, who is just a straight up communist spy. And
I always forget that they're half brothers.
Yeah. but I thought it was interesting that in the story, like, because everyone kind of assumed that Kraven must be communist too if he's Chameleon's half brother, even though the two of them hate each other.
Yeah, anyone from Russia must be commies.
And I find it interesting that he's like, no, he's actually overthrowing the aristocracy, and that kind of makes sense why he hate.
He hates commies because the Marxists and Leninists kicked his family out of.
Yeah.
Which is why he's a very like bootstraps, like, I have the agency, it's up to me to be the best I can be kind of figure, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Kraven's narration is a huge part of the story, and it opens with him naked fighting stuffed animals in his.
There's a lot of him naked fighting.
Yes.
The art is. I was gonna say, like, it's so good because these people look buff, but not like. You know, some comic artists are like, it's like grotesque, like.
Yeah. No, they look very actually muscular. Like,
they're like muscular people, but not like, oh my god, this can't be a real person.
Not like the '90s buff where it's like your arm is like a tree trunk kind of.
I think this is some of the best. Like, this era, like the mid '80s, to me is probably some of the best art that comics has ever had. Like, it's darker and more like colored and shaded appropriately, but it's not so stylized.
Yeah.
That, like, I always gravitate towards this.
It's not all dark. Like, he still uses a lot of, like, lighter blues and lighter, like, yellows and even, like, pinks and magentas in here. It's just, like, it's stylized.
Yeah, the colors are actually pretty vibrant. It's just, they aren't simple like Daryl Hayes, where it's just straight on that color.
This is great coloring. And I love that Kraven's naked for so much of this, because it's so... One, it's neat because it's really bizarre just seeing like this naked dude walking around all the time. Two, you don't see a lot of naked men in comics. And three, it's that it like gels so nicely with the story that this dude's all about like the primitive and the wild. So it's like he's just walking around his own house naked a lot, like fighting his stuffed animals they killed or stuffed.
And then like stuffed animals, like actual animals that he hunted.
He stuffed taxidermy animals. Is a bit more accurate.
Yeah.
So,
and I want it clear. You see his butt a lot, but you never get to see like any balls or anything.
Yeah.
You know, a real flaw of the story.
Butt's all you need.
Drop it down.
It's a good butt.
So, it is pretty good.
So one thing I love is always like it's hard to explain how great the story is because there's a lot of like for a good story has a lot of good use of comic panels, and like one example is as Kraven's doing his monologues. We kept coming back to somebody in the backyard digging what looks like a grave.
Yeah.
And so
we pretty much have that throughout the entire book.
Yeah.
Is this guy
whenever there's
graves.
like a very small sliver of a bottom panel, it's someone digging a grave.
Yeah. So he explains how his family left when he was a child, Russia. And he says like when the aristocracy was gone, that was like basically death of honor and human dignity. And he saw like he saw like in the Western world that dignity is dead as well, and so he basically just talks about how
he found dignity not in the cities but in the jungles. He found like honor in the primal stuff, and he's been wanting to hunt. And he says like, I cannot escape time forever. Herbs and roots and potions cannot rejuvenate a dying spirit or heal a heart crushed by the weight of a corrupted age. I will die soon. I must die soon. But not yet. And then it shows him like reaching into a coffin, and he pulls out Spider-Man's like black suit, and it's like him like tearfully crying. And this is when I was like, I'm 100% on board with the story, because it's like weird that he's like, I can't tell you. I still have to like hunt Spider-Man, but he's like showing like some like sadness over everything. Instead, like it's usually like I would say a bad like writer would be like him like grimacing and like staring at like a picture like a fake taxidermy of Spider-Man, being like, yes, now I must hunt. But instead, he's like, he's proud and he's saddened by this, and you're like, but why, Kraven? What makes you sad about this last hunt?
and like we were saying about the dichotomy between his like civilized and primal self, he's walking around naked, but then he puts on like a robe, walks into this huge study and starts drinking like old wine and talks about like, he's like, it's like so interesting that he's like,
and you're like, so how crazy is this guy? Because usually you don't fight animals naked in your house, but then it's like he seems perfectly normal here, so it's like he's a very high functioning like person with issues.
And one thing that like this style, and DeMatteis does it the best, and like the 80s, the reason why I love 80s comics is they're not afraid to mention like he has herbs and roots and potions that do comic book stuff by like keeping him young and agile, but it's still with a more modern sensibility of like it can only go so far. I'm still a like old deteriorating like man.
There's like a real issue.
Yeah, and I love that balance where it's not wiping the whole thing away. And this is one thing that I feel like Black Panther does really well, the movie too, of it's like capturing where it is this like more mythical spiritual concept behind the superheroes, but adapted in with modern sensibilities, instead of it just being like in the 60s Kraven he would eat a plant and get super strong. Like it's not Popeye, but it's not 100% realistic either. And I like that mix.
So it cuts to our second narrator now, which is Spider-Man. He talks about this comic crook called Joe Face has died, and he was a guy that Spider-Man used to pump for information. And he says, like, why should I care? Joe Face is dead. Why should I care? And he keeps repeating this. And it cuts to a tavern where a bunch of other similar, like, skeezy-looking lowlives are holding a funeral for Joe Face.
These guys are so sad, and Sly's like, just gotta spit on them.
It's kind of represents like Spider-Man has.
No, they are that though.
Spider-Man has no regard for these people at all. Like he's like, these guys are scum. Joe Face is scum. Why do I care about this guy?
And that's the thing too. When I was first reading that like I saw the black costume, I thought Venom symbiote, because I'm like, it makes sense why he's probably more matter, because the symbiote's like tapping into that. I guess I didn't know.
No, he's just
yeah. No, he's just got especially on this time. Spider-Man was lawful good for especially for some reason. So it cuts.
I mean, he has nothing to be happy about. It's not like he got married 2 days ago.
So Spider-Man goes and shows up out of the rafters, interrupts the session. Everyone starts freaking out, scared. And he says like, "Stop! I didn't come here for looking for trouble. I'm just here to say goodbye." And another guy in the crowd takes out a gun to try and take this opportunity, saying, "Oh, I can nail him and reps Town." But Spider-Man says, "Don't even try," as he takes money out of his costume and puts it in the fund for Joe Face's funeral.
Yeah, a decent box and a piece of ground.
And he talks about,
this whole time we're seeing this gravedigger every few pages, and I'm like, is he digging this for Joe Face?
Yeah, I figure it's for Joe Face, so I'm like, okay.
And so Spider-Man keeps wondering why he's thinking about Joe Face so much as he leaves.
Because his friend Ned Leeds had just died earlier in the book, and like now Joe Face, he's like, that's what this all is about, isn't it? I'm scared of dying. Yesterday Ned Leeds, now Joe Face, tomorrow Aunt May, Mary Jane, me. Funny, I'm out there facing death every day as Spider-Man, but I never really think about it. I guess I don't let myself. And then he's like thinking about like Gwen Stacy and her dad and Uncle Ben, and he's like, do I think I'm somehow immune? No, I'm going to die. And he sees, like, as he goes to bed to turn off the light, there's a spider on the wall, and he goes to squish it, but then he thinks about it and he lets it go, and he turns off the light and he's like, I'm going to die, but not yet.
And Ned Leeds, by the way, is the Asian guy from Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yeah.
But he's not.
Yeah, he's not. That's one of the things that make me hate Spider-Man Homecoming, because
yet another thing.
Ned Leeds was like a Peter parallel. Basically, Peter's first girlfriend dumped Peter Parker because she could tell Peter was living some kind of dangerous double life, and Peter had to choose between her or Spider-Man. He chose to be Spider-Man instead. And Ned Leeds was basically the Peter that Peter wished he could be for her. He was basically a dork and like clean cut, and he was that all the way through. He was now. He did not have any secret double life. And for the movies, for whatever reason, they made him into Ganke, which is Miles Morales'.
They just took Miles' supporting cast and slapped a Peter Parker name on it, which like sucks for a lot of different reasons.
And so it cuts back to Kraven.
Yeah, so like as he goes to not squish that spider, he turns off the lights, and then the lights are on, and there's spiders on the wall, but it's Kraven naked in a pile of spiders. And he's just like, there's so many that they're covering.
They cover him, and then he bursts out of them, and all the spiders fly up. And this is, again, it shows how great the art is.
This is when I was into this. After
grabbing fistfuls of them and eating them.
He's just eating the spiders, and he goes, tonight. And then it goes back to Peter in bed, and it says, no, 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 no. And he jumps up screaming, no. He's like, it's just a nightmare. It's just a dream. And then it cuts back to Kraven eating the spiders, and like this green juice is spilling out of his mouth, and he keeps going, tonight, and Peter's freaking out in his bed. He's like, what the fuck is going on? And as Kraven,
he basically had a dream. He basically had a dream where he's being called by spiders, just like Kraven is at the moment. And as he's freaking out, he kills that spider he spared it just a second ago.
Yeah, he smashes against the wall, and then Kraven goes, tonight, and it's just his teeth dripping with green juice. And I'm like, this is great. This is great.
So this is one thing I just want to like spin off and complain about something about like modern media analysis that I think like this book does so well is that like I feel like nowadays a lot of times stories like this have a lot of people complaining like, well, what do they have some sort of mental connection? Like what's going on here?
Like what's going on here?
Yeah, like how come they're connected here? And like I feel like this is just good parallelism, and like it's supposed to be kind of weird and unanswered, and this
it's
connection?
Poetic. It doesn't need to be.
It's literary.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
Also,
and I feel like just a lot of times with modern movies and comics, I hear just constantly being like, well, why didn't they explain this? And like I miss this era where you could just have cool poetic things that are just
because Fight said it was like a dream, but it's not, because it's like as Peter wakes up, it still is intercut. The panels are intercut. With Kraven eating the bugs and saying tonight over and over again. So it's like you could think it's like, well, this is him still thinking about the dream, or this is like what Kraven's actually doing, or
it's a spider sense, whatever.
That's a very important clarification, because when I said that, I said that like trying to extrapolate the panels for the audience, but realistically it's just the panels of Kraven and then Peter waking up and keeps coming back to Kraven back and forth. So the assumption could be that he's actually seeing just what Kraven's seeing.
Mm-hmm. But like the talk of the assumption is why I love it, because like I don't, if it was spelled out, like it wouldn't be as good. Like I like it being poetic and like off-putting.
Yeah, if it was like plot important or something.
If they needed to explain it more, and they went to like, well, actually, when they were younger, they were in a facility together. Yeah. Where it's like, you don't need to. It could you could let it just be parallel. It could be a greater like spider sense thing. It could be Kraven's malicious intent can be felt. You know.
I 100% agree with you, Ryan. There, that I love this kind of stuff. I wish we could see more of this without like questioning. It's like, well, was this real or fake? And instead just being like, you feel it emotionally what it's trying to convey.
Yes.
And so Spider-Man is like so shooken up by this. He has to go. He starts swinging out to like clear his head. He's like, you just gotta keep moving. At the same time, Kraven arrives in the same area via helicopter, saying, "I always leave. I thought the spider has thwarted me, mocked me, humiliated me. I thought he was just a man, but he couldn't possibly be a man. No man could do to Kraven what the spider has. No man." And he says, "I cannot rest until I prove myself. Until I've destroyed you. I cannot rest." And I thought, I always find it interesting because like Kraven is always like a joke villain. He's always being by Spider-Man by the end of the issue. So I thought it was cool just to have that weight on his to see that weight on the villain's mind, and like that's part of like his whole journey here is him trying to overcome his fear of this insurmountable opponent, Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the backstory that DeMatteis adds about, like we were saying, like as part of the aristocracy that was taken down, like having him be on this endless quest for power and to constantly be thwarted by someone who mocks him and knocks him down and humiliates him in public is like such a good motivation for this guy to hate the character that we love, that just cracks jokes and like mocks the villains. And like, yeah, because we did as the audience view Kraven as a joke, and he can't handle that.
Yeah. So Spider-Man is swinging around, and then all of a sudden,
this is when I wasn't sure if the symbiote was sentient or if these red bubbles were like his inner.
Yes.
Like, I didn't know if this is like an ego-id thing where like because Peter.
It's an ego-id thing.
Because Peter's thinking to himself like, all right, of course you're upset. You have your friends. You had a friend die. You saw a dead enemy, but the whole time there's these red text boxes that are like, why am I so sure that something's waiting for me? And it keeps popping up, and I was like, I wondered if that was like inner, whatever. Or
and while he's doing this is the first time we hear the poem too. Spider, spider burning bright in the forest of the night. What immortal hand or eye would frame thy fearful symmetry?
And then he gets nailed with a
dart. And ego thing. The yellow text bubbles try to like rationalize, saying, "Oh, it's just Kraven. He just got beat him again. It's like a loser." And the red bubbles.
My
keep
spider
saying,
sense, like I've been on edge because it's been warning me about Kraven. That must be it.
Yeah, and then as he starts fighting Kraven, and for a second
he starts hallucinating Joe Face.
Yeah, because of the drug. But he's
like, he poisoned me. Obviously, this is a poison drug dart.
Yeah, he's trying to rationalize it, and so he starts fighting Kraven like in this typical Kraven fight. Kraven grabs him in the net, and
I love how too he's hearing the jungle drums in his mind the whole time.
Yeah, jungle drums, and so then Kraven, as he's trapped in his net, Kraven takes out a gun, and Spider-Man's like trying to joke.
Yeah, he's like, it's just like Doc Ock and Vulture. I'm gonna beat him up. He's gonna tell me about a secret hideout and blah blah blah.
It's just like Hunter Zolomon, right, guys? He won't have a gun.
Yeah, and he's like, "Come on!" And he says to Kraven, "Come on, Kraven, rifles on your style." His narration says, "Look at his eyes. There's something in his eyes. This isn't the Kraven I know." And he's still trying to like joke around, like, "Hey, I'm Spider-Man." Like, "Oh, guns on your style. You've
always been macho. If you want to pound me a hamburger, you do it with your bare hands."
Yeah, and then you get this like great like the dual text blurbs of as the panels are going on, where it's like Spider-Man's thinking like the reasonable size, like yesterday Ned Leeds, today Joe Face, tomorrow Aunt May, Mary Jane, and then the red text is all saying he's out of his as Kraven points the gun, and then you get blam, and then just black, and then you still get the repeated like text the panel of the guy just still like grave digging, and it's like that kind of stuff that is so tastefully well done, and because it's like that's the payoff to him digging is like right here where you realize the grave isn't for Joe Face, it was for Spider-Man.
Yeah, because the next panel is just outside Kraven's estate. It doesn't cut now. It's just the same rainy background graveyard, and now Spider-Man's in a coffin.
Yeah, and Kraven's holding his workers and him are holding a funeral, and they bury Spider-Man into the ground, and
Kraven's very sad.
Yeah, for a minute as they lower the coffin, but then he looks into the sky as lightning strikes, and
he like grimaces, like smiling.
Yeah, and it's like this is like the most shitty grin in the world. Which he carries for a lot of this issue. It's just him smiling as he looks up to the sky.
Yeah,
and go back to as they dump the dirt on it. It says again, "Spider burning bright in the forest of the night. What a mortal hand or eye can frame that fierce full symmetry."
I was like, it makes sense that like I guess at some point someone would throw a net on you and be like, "I have a fucking gun. I'm gonna shoot you."
And one thing, too, like, I know I'm just, like, all I do is talk about how great DeMatteis is on this episode, but this is another thing that I feel like a lot of writers, it's a lost art for most of modern comics, is that, like, this is a fully framed, bookended issue that it's, obviously there's way more to come, and the story's not going to end like this, but this is one cohesive chapter where, like, it starts with the grave digging, it's throughout, it ends with the payoff, like, he plotted this as you could read this in a week and feel very satisfied before the next chapter. It's not just like, like a lot of this stuff.
I just stop the story like halfway, like random point or whatever.
Yeah,
I could have read that issue from beginning to end and nothing else, and I would have been like, damn, that was good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that not a lot of writers do nowadays.
Yes. Especially as we had like pointed out before too, where it's like I feel like he's very like not like austere with his writing, but he is choosing narration boxes very carefully rather than like beating over your head with text to be like where Sly's argument where it's like you want comic books to have a lot of text to make your time worth it. Where it's like there are some pages like the Spider Dream where it's like the only text that whole page is just tonight, but it still feels like really good to like read it.
Yeah, the funeral scene has no text bubbles.
Like it's not like a Millar, where you just get like a big like splash page of someone looking like stupid or like trying to smile and be like "fuck."
Yeah,
you're like it just everything. All the textless stuff feels.
If it was Millar, he'd be like, "Now I'm gonna take a shit on your grave."
He would shit on his grave.
and also like Zek's art is doing a lot of the work here too, where absolutely. It's like. It's so his faces, his layouts, just even where he chooses to place the camera is so evocative. Like when Kraven is burying the grave for the first page, the camera's like at the beginning, it's like up and then it's slowly lowering to where it's eye level with Kraven and then it's under him. So for the bottom half of the page, it's now looking up from the grave as the dirt is poured on top of the camera. And like that's so much, you could do so much with that without any words.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So issue 2, starts off with Spider-Man's grave, and it says, "Here lies Spider-Man, slain by the Hunter." And there's a rat on the grave, which is going to be important. And over this grave of Spider-Man, we see Spider-Man looking at the grave, but he looks very buff for Spider-Man. And then he takes off the mask, and it's actually Kraven, and he looks sad, and then he starts laughing, just looking at the grave. And now we get a different narrator.
Oh, fuck this guy.
Tippity, 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 tap. Listen to the rain fall down. Listen to the people running like rats. And there's like people running around in the rain in the city.
It's a woman specifically running in the scene.
Yeah.
As the rain falls, she has like newspaper over her head, trying to cover herself as she's running through the streets. But then the rat gets in her way, and she trips and falls.
And then a hand comes out of the sewers and drags her down to the sewers.
A manhole.
Yeah.
Yep. And then he drags her down, and you hear yum.
Yep.
And now it makes more sense why so much of this issue, because it goes down to this guy and it starts giving you, fleshing out this guy, Vermin, the Rat Man's backstory. And it makes more sense since he was probably part of like this arc of, what is this, Amazing Spider-Man?
Web.
He was not part of his arc. He was part of the Captain America arc. But during that arc, Spider-Man and Captain America did fight, and that's a major part of what they bring up with Vermin a lot of times.
They fought him. They fought Vermin.
Yes, but Spider-Man couldn't beat Vermin on his own. He needed Captain America's help. So Vermin says he says it multiple times, like, he didn't beat me. He needed Captain America's help to beat me.
Yeah, and he, like I said, he kind of reminds me of Gollum a little bit, where he's like this weird.
He's pretty much Gollum, but just hairier,
and a lot stronger. Yeah, and he's just like always like precious perfumes, and he's like talking.
Sweet smell is a stink worse than mine, but they like to pretend they're better than me. He's talking about women.
Yeah, and he brings them down. And he eats them.
And just so you guys know, he does eat this lady, which is crazy. But so Vermin was only in one story before. He was in a Captain America story by DeMatteis and Zek that like culminated in some team up issue with Spider-Man. But so he's not like this long running established character, but he does have a little bit of history.
I was gonna say I feel like no one's ever talked about Vermin, so I just assumed he was like one of those like, look at this new villain that's kind of like pushed aside.
It's more like the writer's favorite villain, because DeMatteis and Zek were like, we're working on this again, this other series. Let's bring back Vermin, because they want this some villain to fill Vermin's role here. And so why not Vermin? So they put him in here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I prefer Vermin Supreme.
I was gonna make that joke, but I didn't.
Anyway,
so we get to now a different lady. Except it's Mary Jane, and she's like, man.
except
it's all like a twist.
Yeah.
It just shows Mary Jane.
Yeah, so she's
outside.
She's like the fourth narrator, and she talks about how Peter's missing.
And she's like, man, this is not how I expected being newlyweds. You know, I thought we'd be snuggling or whatever, but he's not here. And he's like, he's probably webbing around, you know, making the world free and safe for democracy, fighting Dr. Squid or whatever his name is. And then
there's a deeper color text box repeating the words "dead?" ?
You're probably dead, and he's like, no, of course he's good at what he does. He's dead, and she's like, no, he's just late. He's just, and then
this is what was making me think. It's like, oh, I guess maybe the symbiote isn't a darker like colored text box. Maybe it is just like a narrative use.
I love how much you guys spent thinking about the symbiote when it's never mentioned or anything.
Well, that's just you. That's you bringing your comic book knowledge into this. This story has nothing to do with symbiote. That's you breaking your baggage.
Again, it's fucking comics. I don't know whether or not it's like, actually, this is a clone of Peter that was doing this the whole time, where I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it is hard to...
Like, I don't know what the black suit can do. I know it's different than regular Spider-Man. Is it just cosmetic, or like...
We have some
thing of this
background knowledge, so going in, it's like, you assume that background knowledge is part of it, because comics always do that.
Having some background knowledge, I find is worse than having none or a lot.
Yeah, it's just like a little bit of knowledge is dangerous.
It's like in a fighting game when you're just button mashing, you're pretty good, and then you try to learn the combos and you suck
just doing
until you get good.
Yeah.
So she's freaking out in the apartment, and she sees a rat, and she fucking smashes it to death with her shoe.
And she smashes it because she's like, oh, you want to fight? You filthy, disgusting. But as she's killing it, she stops and looks disgusted and turns away, like horrified after murdering this rat.
Yeah.
And then we get Spider-Man, except it's again Kraven now, and he's like, you can
definitely tell because of the narration now, because everyone has very distinctive coloring for the narration box.
Yes.
Yep. And he's like, the spider lies in a grave by my hand, my greatest enemy, my greatest tormentor.
Kraven also gets like a different typeface too. Like,
more serif.
I think everyone does, because so does Vermin. He has a different font.
Yes,
yeah, which is a cool touch. And now he's like basically like, yeah, I need. It wasn't enough to just destroy Spider-Man. I have to prove myself superior to him and laugh in the face of his hovering ghost. So he's like, I am the Spider now, and he
look at me. I'm the Spider.
Yeah. He crawls around his house again. He gets naked. He also in the first issue was going back and forth between I'm Kraven the Hunter and I'm Kravenov the Man. He's like he's both of those things, and he's like, but I'm not done yet. My metamorphosis isn't complete. I have to merge with the spider.
So first he's got to crawl over and start licking up a bowl like a dog.
Yeah, he does.
Drink some.
He's drinking those herbs and roots that give him super strength from before, and he's just like just drink it like a dog. Let the spider seep in, but as he also gets his own id, asking why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? As he's drinking this weird.
And he keeps going pain.
He's reflecting back on like Russia and his family, and while this is going on,
he argues like whether his father was a fool or whether his father was a good man, the last remnant of a culture of decency, a world that was consumed by the spider. And so like the spider in his mind is like this, like it symbolizes what the end of his decent society, like basically the decay in culture, and not just Spider-Man himself.
Yeah, he's like Spider-Man represents.
Yep, and then he starts like breaking these like windows around him, and it starts letting spiders out that form a giant spider. And this gets back into the thing with like Ryan, where it's like, well, did he drink up the milk and then now he's like on drugs or something? It's like you kind of just feel it, him grappling with this giant spider made of spiders, because he's talking about how he's like so afraid of the spider, essentially.
Yeah.
Also, in between all these things too, now instead of the gravedigger at the bottom of the panel, we actually get like a scene going on with this rat scurrying over Peter's grave
over and over. The rat's there. It's red eyes too, like pretty bright red eyes.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of the burial digging in the first issue.
Yes.
I also like how he when he talks about the fall of civilization and Spider-Man representing it, he says like, you take the guys of a Trotsky, a Lenin, a Hitler, a Reagan, a Gorbachev. Like, you are just a guy in a mask that is crushing people's spirits. And I'm like, this is
good old Russian aristocrats.
I'm like, this is interesting.
But having this like communist character from the 60s be like Reagan and Gorbachev and Hitler are all the same. I'm like, fuck you, Stanley.
And we go back to Vermin, and he's just eating this body.
This is where we gets backstory, where he says like he sees a picture of Spider-Man in the newspaper that lady, now dead lady, was holding, and she sees Spider-Man. And he thinks back when he fought Spider-Man in Captain America, and he's like, I have to show him that I'm not afraid of Spider-Man, not afraid of Captain America. I'm going to go out of the store. I'm going to go out to the dark. But as he sees a spider outside his sewer manhole cover, he goes back on the ground because he is scared of Spider-Man.
Yeah, because they beat the shit out of him. He's like, "Don't hurt me again! Don't hurt me again!" And then we get Mary Jane walking around looking for Peter. Of course, some guys just start catcalling her with some very tiny shorts on. Not her. The men do.
She has a pants.
Yeah, the men have very tiny shorts.
They're like fucking like
80s baby.
Yeah, 80s baby
that's
guys.
True. When we were watching Stranger Things, we were like, what is with these tiny shorts that people wear?
I love that it's pouring out, and these guys are just outside in the rain being like, let's chase after this. It's
funny because Mary Jane is dressed practically. These guys are just idiots, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's clear. They're obviously pieces of shit.
Yeah, so
Kraven starts going crazy.
As a cat calling her, she says, get stuffed, and she's saying it, she said it herself, and that was very smart, because she knew she was antagonizing these guys, and they immediately start following after her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then we cut back to Kraven, and he's fighting this giant spider beast. And the thing that I really like about it is now a lot of the text that, like, instead of that, like, inner monologue that we were saying about, like, why am I doing this? Now it's part of the actual art.
Yes.
Where, like, there's the narrative, and then behind the narration boxes are just, like, text, like, sprayed all over the place. So, like, get away. And later on it'll be like, it's true. And I think that's really
It's like when Peter woke up and it was like, no. It looks like that crazed, different font handwriting all over. And
now also in the same vein, that doubting voice. But what if it's that doubting voice? What if it's true? it's becoming part of his regular text. Now it's no longer part of the red text anymore.
Yeah. There's nothing to fear. I am Kraven, Kravenov, the hunter, man. There is no spider, no supernatural creature that inhabits men's souls. There is only Spider-Man, a costumed adventurer who, through sheer luck, has managed to beat me again and again. And this is when he's saying, what if it's true? What if it's true? And then he starts getting up and starting to fight the spider monster.
But it's like covering him and like engulfing him in all the spiders. And he's saying, I'm so afraid. And that's where I get the it's true, it's true, it's true.
Yeah.
And it's like that kind of stuff is really cool too, because this is something that kind of you can only see in a comic book medium of like this kind of expression, like conveying an emotion that can't be done if you were only like how we're telling this to you. Like it looks so much cooler on page and so much more direct.
And we still get, like, some incredible narration here, like, how mad, how paradoxical, to find dignity and honor, sanctity and civilization in that which most men would call uncivilized. But I am not most men. I see with eyes that pierce time and shadow and falsehood. I am Kraven, and I
This
fear
scene was,
nothing.
again, when I was like, is this Grant Morrison? Or, like, this is so weird, but, like, not weird. And then again, I'm like, not weird enough, but it's very weird.
It's a very like kind of grounded weird, even though Kraven is fighting a giant spider made of spiders in his
and
like,
drowns
house
in it,
naked.
and he's like,
DeMatteis always focuses on the characters and the motivations, and that's where I think it really works. Where like even though what's going on is really like psychedelic and crazy, you still completely understand what you're supposed to feel here.
And he's as he's drowning in the sea of spiders, he's like, don't panic, fear eats you, fear murders you, remember what you're doing. It just reminded me of Dune with like fear is the mind killer thing. And then he's like, I am Kraven. He has to surrender to the spider-ness, like not fight. He has to become Spider-Man. And then at the same time, Vermin's in the sewers thinking, Spider-Man, Spider-Man.
And then it comes back to Mary Jane walking as the two guys are chasing her, and the two guys catch up to her and grab her, and
but then Spider-Man swings down to save her.
Yeah. And
he's like, I'm the spider, you see in the Kraven text box, and then he just beats up these two dudes.
Like, brutalizes them.
Yeah, and Mary Jane's like, stop it, what are you doing?
and I like it because Mary Jane smiles when she sees Spider-Man saying, because, Peter saved me, like, everything's okay now, but no. As soon as she sees Peter beating the shit out of these guys, she says, stop it, but then as he leaves, she thinks that wasn't Peter.
Yeah. Vermin comes out of the sewers now, finally. He's like, I came out for Spider-Man. I have to eat. I'm hungry. I'm always hungry. No, eat later. I have to find Spider-Man, basically. And then it ends on the panel of...
a spider on Spider-Man's grave.
The technical, like, singer, because, like, all the panels, like, the rat running around the grave, leads up to, like, the rat runs away once it sees a spider crawl onto Spider-Man's grave.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so issue 3, it begins with Kraven being Spider-Man now, which it was so neat because I assumed Kraven's Last Hunt was about Kraven going out and like trying to get Spider-Man, which is like, again, I don't know Kraven, so I'm like, I don't know how this is 6 issues. So he beats him in issue 1, and then he becomes Spider-Man for like the issue 2 and 3. I'm like, this is great. Just like him running around as this crazed naked man. It's like, now I gotta become Spider-Man. That's the only way I can beat Spider-Man.
And this is one of the reasons why this is such an effective, like, definitive story for a villain. Because a lot of times, like you said, like, if it was one big plot, like, at the end of the story, like, it's comics, and this is a Spider-Man story from the 80s. Spider-Man didn't die forever in 1987.
Yeah.
So, like, if it's just his master plan, he's gonna lose at the end. Having him win right away, and then now it's just exploring how his psyche deals with this stuff is more interesting than just, like, here's my big master plan, and then...
Yeah, that is going to get thwarted. Whereas here, it's like, Spider-Man's going to come back in something, but even then, what happens at the end did surprise me.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Kraven like swings through this window, and because he says like, I'm watching these, it's like drug dealers or smugglers and stuff. He says, I'm watching them through the glass specimens flies. Watch them. I'm the spider, and I know in ways men cannot. I know. And so like he comes in here, he's like, I let them scream and shout my name, and he's like, I hear nothing but the weaving of the web. And it's just like him beating up all these guys like Spider-Man, and I devour them.
And he very visibly at the end snaps the guy's neck, and the police come in. They're debating whether this was a good thing or not. But then, Spider-Man's new rough attitude is a good thing or not. But then they see, Spider-Man killed this one dude.
Yeah, they're like, Spider-Man's killing people now.
I also just love, too, how he's just like, they serve me, worship me, but the world must never know. Like, and I skitter away. It's just the way that he's, like, trying to get in Spider-Man's head, where he's, like, almost, like, deifying him to be, like, this, like, figure. It's sort of like how a lot of people like writing Batman, where it's just, like, this force of nature.
That's a very important part of the story, the deification of Spider-Man, because that ties into why Kraven does
right. Because he talks to the theme of is he man or Spider-Man? Is he like a guy in a costume or is he some bigger force?
Some greater force, like the force that destroys country, pretty much.
Yep. So he gets up to a rooftop. He's like, "I'm the spider." No, I'm Kraven. And he yells it, and then the narration says, like, "I've hunted as the spider hunts, consumed the spider's prey, and I've proven myself superior, but not in every way. No, almost every way. The final proof comes. He has to beat someone that Spider-Man hasn't beaten."
Yes.
And so then that's when we cut back to Vermin.
Vermin eating somebody
the ultimate Spider-Man villain.
That's what I was like,
eat him up.
Of all people. Okay.
But I think this kind of thing, the reason why, like you said, like Vermin at the very beginning, like plays in an interesting way. And the reason why I really like this choice is like, he couldn't pick a classic Spider-Man villain that he has to beat because Spider-Man's beaten all those guys.
Yes.
It has to be somebody like relatively new, and also having it be like the most animalistic of the animal Spider-Man villains really works for me.
Because this whole story has like a horror feel to it, and Vermin is like a horror movie monster.
Yes,
and
yeah.
And like if he's a hunter, he should be like, it makes sense that he's hiding from this animal, like
exactly,
yeah.
Yeah, and so Vermin runs into some cops, and he like throws one guy out of the cop car, and then a bunch of rats come over and like eat him.
He can summon rats to start eating the guy. Like I didn't realize he
He's
had
the
like
Pied Piper.
Yeah, he has like rat control.
Yeah, so he's like scarier fucking Ant-Man.
He's also
and
confused.
a cop lady like shoots him, and then he's like, "Oh, such a pretty voice." And because like he grabs her, and then her smell reminds him of his mother, so he lets her go and then just leaves.
He licks her before he lets her go.
He licks her. Yeah.
There's a lot of mother stuff.
Yeah, a lot of mommy
in this
issues.
book. Kraven talks a lot about his mom. Vermin talks a lot about his mom. Spider-Man talks about Aunt May a lot.
Yeah, it's always daddy issues or mommy issues.
And then we get like one short scene of where Mary Jane goes to see someone. It's like the new editor at the Daily Bugle.
It's Robbie Robertson. He's in the Spider movies. He doesn't say much, but he's the black guy always with J.K. Simpson's Jonah Jameson.
He's been like a Daily Bugle worker since the very beginning.
Yeah,
he's not.
The movies in general have not done service to the Daily Bugle characters, but Robbie Robertson was like a role model for Peter in the comics. Like, he's a very important character in the comics.
Yeah, he was the one that was always like looking out for Peter when JJJ was like a real piece of shit.
Yeah. And so Mary Jane goes to, and she goes to him, like she's wondering if she could tell him the truth. Like she's like, Robbie Robertson's a good guy. I can't. She's wondering if she could tell him, but at the end she backs down and she leaves without telling him anything about what's happening with Peter.
And then you have again like the at the bottom of this, like how we had all the panels of the grave digging, and now like the rat on the grave. Now there's a bunch of spiders crawling,
forming all over the gravesite.
Yeah.
I love this scene too. This is when I was like almost thinking what Ryan was saying before. I'm like, does he have some kind of power where like when he's preparing the hunt that people can feel like that they're being hunted, because he has a rat. So Kraven's in his manor, and he has this rat in a cage, and he just starts stabbing around the rat with a knife, and he's like, tonight I'm gonna hunt. It's like the newspapers are calling him the cannibal killer, but I know it by name. I am the hunter. I know all beasts. And at the same time, Vermin starts like,
I know all beasts intimately.
Yeah.
He starts,
I'm inside you, Vermin. Can you hear me? Can you hear my call?
Yeah, and
let destiny take our hands, draw us closer together.
You are my test, Vermin, my fire of purification. Don't fear me. Love me. For I intend to bless you with pain and blood and sorrow tonight. And then he gets naked, as always.
I'm gonna bless you with my love. And he takes it.
And the whole time, Vermin is
he's
like,
got that shit-eating grin on his face as he's like crouching at the window.
And Vermin's like, oh my god. Like he feels it. Like he feels something chasing him. He's like, what's going on? This is why I was like, Peter can feel it too. He must have such a presence. Like,
which again, it goes back to the literary thing where it doesn't say it's like you were feeling my
psychic
hunting,
powers.
My hunting TM presence. Instead, it's just like you just feel like that this guy loves hunting and everyone can feel it.
And that's fine.
And then in that same kind of parallel, Vermin's sleeping in the sewers, and he wakes up and he's like, "Bad dreams, someone calling me, chasing me, but I'm home now, safe. Oh no."
Well, the panicked rat that he was like stabbing at is running through the sewers to Vermin, which is how he finds him.
Oh,
Was that,
yeah,
it's the same
drops
rat?
the rat out of
Because
his
Kraven
window.
took that rat and threw him out the window.
Yeah, and then the rat ran back to him, and that's how he found him. Because I was like, oh, that was really cool.
Oh, yeah, he terrified the rat so he would run home. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yep.
I never noticed
That's good.
that.
That's
Yep.
really good.
That's some good detail right
Yeah.
there.
That's really cool.
That's some good detail right there.
So Spider-Man, so Kraven as Spider-Man shows up and confronts Vermin, and this is where Vermin says, like, you weren't alone, you didn't beat me.
And
Spider-Man's
like Spider-Man as Kraven's like, tell me how I lost to you last time. Like, tell me how I wasn't strong enough, because he's like, he wants him to say basically.
This is how he
He's
gets
like, that's
off.
right, I was alone, I helped, I cheated. Like, he's saying, I sucked, Spider-Man sucked, right?
Alone, I could never have defeated you. Do you understand, Vermin? Do you understand?
And they have a
He's
pretty
beautiful. He's vile. The text boxes say, like, he's just, like, lost his mind during the hunt.
He's beautiful. He's vile. He's mine.
They have a great fight too. It's like not too over the top, but it's like they're grappling and like rolling in the sewer, just like punching and biting each other. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, like, fisticuffs when it comes to the fights, where it's not like, oh, I gotta plan out this. It's just like, it's two people just going at it
Yeah.
and wailing on each other.
Yeah.
And I love how he's like, alone he could never have defeated you, never, but I can. Dishonored father, sainted mother, stained honor, I can. It's pretty good.
I am the spider, and I know. And then and ends with
In
him,
normal ways that men cannot.
and it ends with him coming out of sewers holding Vermin's unconscious body. And as this is happening, the final panel is a swarm of spiders over Spider-Man's grave, and a black hand reaches out of the grave, and the text, Spider-Man's narration box is back, questioning Mary Jane.
Yes. So now, part 4,
Yes.
Resurrection. I just love this cover. It's Spider-Man coming, like, pulling himself out of the grave in the rain and mud, and it's awesome.
This is usually a trade cover, this image of...
Yeah, that's the trade cover.
He likes
usually.
The
Spider-Man.
art is so good.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of the art, now there's barely any art on this page because it's pure white. And
Yeah, it's a pure white page with a tiny little naked Peter Parker curled up.
In fetal
Just warm.
position.
yeah, warm, white, peaceful.
Peaceful. And he's visited
Like my
by...
mother's womb.
And he's visited by Ned Leeds, and Ned Leeds is like acting like his dorky self. Hey, how are you, pal? How you looking like that? Remember me, Ned Leeds?
Slide, do you know why Ned Leeds died?
Yeah, I did know. I actually think it's really cool.
Oh, no.
Well, because editorial's like, oh, by the way, Ned Leeds is a hobgoblin. Oops, he's dead.
Yeah.
He's the hobgoblin?
No, he wasn't. So,
No, it's really complicated. We can't.
I don't
get into
want
it.
more
comic book
basically-
stuff?
I like this too much.
Hobgoblin was
Don't
like
do this.
but just to make it sound cooler and mind piece today, basically the Hobgoblin, because Green Goblin got revealed pretty quickly. When they made it, Hobgoblin was basically a successor to Green Goblin, and they wanted to keep it a long mystery who he was. So as a massive red herring, they had Ned Leeds die while wearing the Hobgoblin costume. And sure that he was the real Hobgoblin just put it on him before he died, so they could throw Spider-Man off the trail. And I thought that was cool.
I thought the hobgoblin was the doctor that made Ben Reilly.
That's the jackal.
That's a jackal.
They really are all like animal things. Like
Yeah, exactly. And just one thing, the reason why I even bring it up that I think is the thing that I think that's actually cool about that is they leave the Hobgoblin a mystery for so long because Steve Ditko wanted the Green Goblin to be a nobody, but Stan Lee was like, no, it has to be Norman Osborn, and that's one of the big reasons why Ditko quit Spider-Man.
Oh.
He wanted to be a nobody. And so
so he's like, hey, you remember me, your pal Ned Leeds, and Peter's like, but you're dead, and he's like, dead? Oh no, he's right, and he just like crumbles into like this zombie
again,
pile of
horrifying to me. This is like in Tales from the Crypt.
It's not like, oh no, he's right. Like as Ned says at every panel,
starts
oh god,
decomposing.
he's right.
Yeah.
And he decrepifies and just falls apart.
And Peter's like back in fetal position. He's like, peace and quiet in the warm white. And then you see a panel of black, but with Spider-Man's eyes. And it's just like, come out. And he thinks Mary Jane?
Yeah, and so his whole narration is not entire time. Even as he's acknowledging Ned Leeds, he's just like, no, I don't know Ned Leeds. I don't know anyone. I just want to stay in the warm, the white. I just want to be... I like it here. Don't make me leave.
No Mary Jane, nothing else out here. It's all like no life.
No love.
No life.
Yeah, no love, no life. I am the spider, and now it's
No
a spider
wife, no
crawling
life, right,
through
guys?
the dirt.
No, but as he's saying, like, oh, there's no beautiful, no nothing. His other narration is saying something's there. It's always there. And black consumes the page.
I am the spider. Spider the MI.
Now the
Ned's
panels
dead.
are zooming out, and now it's just like a spider. Now he's a spider. He's crawling through like this tunnel.
Yeah. Gwen's dead. Uncle Ben's dead. Ned's dead.
I'm dead.
Steve
No,
Jobs
I'm the
is dead.
spider.
Steve Jobs is dead. I'm dead.
Yeah,
and it's just like stream of consciousness now. Like he's just like everyone's dead, and he's like, I am Spider. Is that really who I am? Yes, of course. Spider's strong, fearless. Spider can win. Not like I, that weakling, am that coward. I am the one who can die. I am Peter Parker, and the Spider, as he's imagining himself as a spider or whatever this is supposed to symbolize, the Spider is crawling to his tunnel, and all of a sudden these creatures inside the tunnel start attacking it and killing it.
Then he's like, the spider's dying.
I know why guys hate me, but I thought these were the manifestation of the Venom symbiotes.
They do look very similar.
I really thought that was more of a major part of the story, which is why it was so funny
funny because it's not mentioned or anything at all.
Yeah. The spider's dying. The spider never lived. The spider's a trap, a lie, a coffin, and I've got to be free of it. So then Peter starts bursting out of this cut open dead spider body. Yeah. He just naked crawls out of there, and he's like, I'm Peter Parker. It's all I ever was, it's all I ever will be.
Yeah.
So he's not the spider.
I'm going to be free. You can't stop me. You can't keep me here. You've murdered a mask, but you haven't murdered a man. Mm-hmm. And then that come out, the mask starts to slip, and we see Kraven's face under it.
Yeah, he's like, all these years...
That black huge mask.
He basically starts saying, all these years, you thought I was something larger than life. I was some supernatural thing. You thought I was magic, some spider, but I'm not a spider. It's just me, a man, in the suit. I'm Peter Parker, and...
Yeah, just the normal guy who got tapped on the shoulder by fate.
Yeah.
Mary Jane, I'm coming. Mary Jane, I love you. Just Peter Parker. That's my weakness. That's my strength.
Yeah.
And he starts clawing his way out of the grave.
Yeah, he's like, Mary Jane. He starts like panicking.
This is great.
You see Kraven shooting.
It's
him
like 1,000 different panels that are really long strips. There's like 10 per page, and it just interchanges between the moment he was shot by Kraven and the moment he like woke up in the coffin and started to dig at the dirt.
So when he said that image of Kraven where he takes off his mask, says, come out. Now it's him pointing the gun at Peter back that night he murdered him, saying, come out so I can kill you again and again and again. As you see coming back to this image of Kraven holding a gun at Peter.
Yeah, and Peter's crying, frantic, digging. Mary Jane, you've got to help me. Don't leave me here. Don't let me lose you. There is no spider. There is no spider. Mary Jane, I love you. It's like,
I love you. And then he busts out of the ground, and then you get that image from like the cover, and he says, I love you. That's the only text on it.
Yeah. And he gets up and immediately falls down and then gets back up in the mud. He goes into Kraven's house and he finds all these newspapers that is like Spider-Man Berserk and the Cannibal Killer Assault. And Peter's like 2 weeks.
And again, the art's great here because like the only narration after he gets up is he goes and sees like the 2 weeks. But the way that he's drawn like the poses that he's always in, you can tell like he's just woken up and he's all like groggy,
seems weak,
and stumbling around. Yeah,
he definitely seems weak in the way he's walking. You don't need to
say
like
he's always putting his hand on things to lean on them.
He doesn't need to say I've woken up for 2 weeks and I'm very weak as a result.
It's like I start to stumble through the halls. It's like the art shows you.
Yeah. He's like 2 weeks in the ground, in the grave, dead. 2 weeks. And while I've been lying there trapped, you've been out there, Kraven, wearing my costume, abusing my name, usurping my life. 2 weeks. And he says like, oh, it must not have been bullets. It must have been like whatever jungle bullshit you use. and now we get like a kind of a parallel of the opening scene from the first issue, where now Peter's the one fighting all of these
taxidermy animals.
The taxidermy animals, but he's just ripping them apart, and like he's
I just realized that this is really clever because Kraven did this when he was just a man trying to be a spider, and now Peter is no longer Spider in Kraven's eyes. Now he's doing what Kraven was doing, fighting these inanimate objects.
Yes. And his Kraven's goons show up, and he's like, "You're right, it is him. We should get out of here. Look at him, he's weak. He can hardly." And Spider-Man looks back, and he's like, "Uh-oh," and then they run away. And I think they're speaking Russian, which is cool.
Yeah.
They try to run away, and then Spider-Man grabs him, and he's like, "Where?" And it's like the text box is really small because his voice is fried.
And dotted line around the text bubble, so it's like
so the whispering. It's like
But he says like they're terrified. And it's like, I want to kill them. Part of me wants to tear at them to get back at Kraven, but it's a very small part. I'll deal with him, but not as a spider, as a man. And then he like jumps out the window.
Also, that mask image earlier, as Kraven's face started to be revealed, he says he's out. And now that Spider-Man jumps out of the window here after getting the information, his face is fully revealed, and it says he's coming. So Kraven, again, you don't need to say psychic powers or whatever, but he like feels that Spider-Man's out of the grave because he, I guess, suspected this would happen.
Yeah. And I assume he made the potions for 2 weeks of whatever. Yeah. So then we have Vermin in an electrified cage that, presumably with, that's where Kraven has him. And then we get a lot of Peter narration, but it's over Mary Jane, who's just like sitting there waiting for him.
Well, first, the narration, the images of Vermin Peter's narrating how he felt in the coffin, so he's trapped in like an animal, like a cage like animal, so paralyzed with vermin right now. And then it cuts to Peter visiting Mary Jane, who's obviously worried about.
Yeah, and Peter's like, what must have been like for 2 weeks? You saw a killer who just might be your husband. You read the papers, you watch the news, you don't sleep much, you cry. Knowing you probably walk the streets looking for me. I pray to God you didn't find me. Him. Kraven. And she's like turns off the TV and throws the remote and it's caught in the web, and Peter comes in, he doesn't even say anything, he takes off his mask, goes up to her, and they kiss and then slide out of panel. And he just says, I love you.
Slide out of panel.
And then Peter wakes up, presumably after the coitus or whatever.
Well, first he hears like it's him sleeping and it's like trapped, an animal in the grave, 2 weeks, and then he wakes up and then it's gone.
Yeah, he's in pitch blackness, but he sees, no, I'm still at my wife's house.
I thought I was back there, down there. I thought, she's here, thank God, she's here. And he's getting dressed, even though he's still like whispering. And she's like, "You can hardly stand. You can hardly talk." And he's like, "My voice will come back." And she's like, "No, it's not about the voice." Yeah. And he's like, I Mary Jane, I don't want to go. Believe me, I want to stay right here with you where it's safe, where nothing bad can touch me. But don't you see?
Just like the white place in his destination.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's waiting. He's murdered in my name. I've got to go. And now Craven's really happy. And he's like,
I love that face. It's just so good.
That shitty grin. Like,
yeah. And Mary Jane's like, Peter, after everything you've been through, you need time to sort it out. And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm going. And they just hold hands one more time. There's a flash of lightning that just is a cool
It's not just that they hold hands. These 3 panels are my favorite in the entire thing. This is my favorite part. It's because she reaches over and it's this kind of subtlety that I love, that you can do, you can evoke so much emotion. Because she goes to grab him, and she grabs him by the bicep, and then he goes over and the next panel is them holding hands, and then he takes her hand and puts it up against his cheek, and then he's off, and it's just such a good intimate moment to them.
Yes.
It's I get the they come back and they bone, where I'm like, yeah, okay, but here it's I was getting way more about how much they kind of need each other.
Daryl doesn't want a bone. He wants someone to grab their hand and put it.
I want someone to love me, okay, not just bone me.
So then Peter's following his spider sense, and he swings into a window, and there's Kraven just with that shit-eating grin standing there in the Spider-Man suit.
But I love this. He never did this shit-eating grin around Spider-Man. He always maintains composure. Yeah. So as soon as he sees Spider-Man, I gotta be Kraven. I gotta be serious.
And I just really, and he thinks he's here in Kraven's narrative, and I'd really like to think that he's just been standing here for hours, being like, I can't wait. I
think he probably was.
I think so too. Okay, so. It opens with the exterior of the building they're in, and a narration.
I just want to mention that this cover of the Spider-Man where he's stalking Kraven, I've seen this cover, and I don't know from where and stuff. I bet it's when people talk about the story.
Definitely,
yeah.
This is the most.
This is also one of the commonly used. This was the old '90s version of the trade. This cover.
This is gonna be the cover of this episode, by the way. I already picked it.
That's where you've seen it, Daryl.
This episode.
Yes. So
I've gone back in time. I've flashed myself.
don't it's not. How does it feel to be flashed by Daryl? I've been in that victim spot.
This is the first time. This is the first time he brings up the fact that this line, they said my mother was insane. This is the first.
I think so. Yeah.
So he said my mother was insane. A woman of rare breeding, true nobility and tender heart, driven out of Russia by Trotskys and Lenins, driven to America, which is overrun by the poverty, the filth, the utter mundanity of life here. Finally trapped away like an animal, trapped, abused, terrified, and again. Image of vermin in his cage trying to escape.
And my father, his spirit broken, allowed it.
Yeah. The stuff of she thought America was filthy and disgusting plays really well with the rat imagery of vermin too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And she, as a child, can only watch as helpless as she was. They said my mother was insane. That she took her own life. They lied. And
her life was stolen from her. Stolen by the spider.
Yeah, and Spider-Man comes down from the ceiling, and he's like, Kraven! And he's like, Spider-Man?
Oh, this is when he has the epiphany where he's like, he is just a man. He's not...
the spider.
Yeah.
And yet within him is something more, something great, something awful, the essence of the demon that brought Russia to ruin, the demon that destroyed my father, consumed my mother, the demon I have at long last defeated. And meanwhile, during that narration, Peter Parker's just wailing on him, and Kraven just spits out blood and just smiles.
You had all 2 weeks!
And Kraven's like, ugh, and then he spits out blood and he just smiles when it says defeated.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not gonna fight you, I have no reason
Again,
to.
this is where I was because I was expecting, since see something in the Spider-Man suit, I'm like, it's gonna be like a Spider-Man mirror brawl or something. But Kraven just puts up his hands. And he's like, hit me again if you like Spider-Man. Hit me 100 times. I won't resist. I won't fight. There's no reason to fight. Don't you see? I finally won. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, he's like, I killed you. I buried you. And after I killed you, I took your place. And I allowed you to live
during this.
And Peter tries to like comic book. He's like, no, you drugged me, Kraven, threw me in a state of simulated, and he cuts him off. He's like, you could just as well have been dead had I wished it. I only allowed you to live so that you could know that I killed you.
Yeah.
That in donning your costume, in replacing you, I proved myself in all ways your superior.
Yep. And he takes off his clothes, like Daryl said.
And just putting on his Kraven costume.
Yeah.
And he's narrating, the man's confused.
I do really like that he's like, I've defeated you. I'm superior in every way. Now look at my balls.
The man is confused, but the spider comprehends. I feel his awe, his reverence, his submission. But it's part of the dance, part of the plan for the man to comprehend as well. So I'll show him the truth, and when we finally share it, we'll both be free. And
he's like, come with me. Let's go downstairs. And you probably think it's a trap, but your spider sense would tell you if it was. So you know that I'm telling the truth.
How calm I feel, how peaceful. As if something inside me, some not, some tangle of fear and anger, and so much more has finally been untied. All these years fleeing Russia, suffocating America, finding release, finding honor in the jungle. All these years, and I've never known peace or calm, or that elusive thing called happiness. But I feel it as if I can know it now, that it's nearby, just outside perhaps, hidden in the patter of the rain, the drumbeat of the thunder. Peace, calm, happiness, and ending. Soon.
And then in the basement, there's Vermin in that electric cage being tortured, basically. And he's like, look, you're the cannibal killer, your old foe, Vermin. Perfect fusion of man and animal. I have beaten and captured. And he basically is like, this was the final test, the final proof. You were unable to defeat him without You and Captain America could barely do it together, but I defeated him. Look at him, a whimpering, terrified, pathetic little mouse, and
Spider-Man's
did
like
it.
Crawling around and looking at him, and you get more of like Kraven's text box, like how much he's enjoying this. I just love this idea and the imagery of like Kraven's so happy and elated with himself and what he's done, and to Spider-Man, he's just like super confused because Kraven took over his life, pretended to be Spider-Man for 2 weeks, captured this rat man, and put him in a cage. He's like, "Look, I won!"
and Vermin is by the way, Vermin is terrified of Spider-Man, not Kraven, because he doesn't know look, that was Kraven in the costume, so he's not scared of the man. He's scared of the spider, which now Spider-Man is right now.
And even like Kraven throws in a torch, and like Vermin has always been like averse to fire and light, and he's just like no, and Spider-Man like uses his webs to put out that fire, and Kraven thinks to like his narration is, so the man behind the mask does what he can to alleviate the mouse's pain, then skitters back down the wall, turning his rage upon me, as if I were to blame for all this. What a monumental joke.
So Kraven starts. Spider-Man starts being like busy with what Phil suggested. What the fuck did you do? Like, what are you doing here? And
you stand there grinning like some brain damaged gorilla.
Yeah, and then
Kraven jumps on top of a big taxidermy elephant, and he's like, "I'm the greatest."
Yeah,
he's like, "Hear me, Spider! Hear me, man! Hear the bellow of the elephant, the roar of the lion, the triumph of Kraven!" And he just like howls on top of this.
And Spider-Man's like, "Shut up!" But he knocks him off the rhino, saying, and then Kraven's narration saying, "My triumph, right? Doesn't it?" So it's funny because all the reasons for his actions we know, but Spider-Man doesn't know. So he just sees.
Yeah, he doesn't say any of this out loud.
Yeah. And so
then Kraven gets up.
Kraven also mentions during the text box too, where he's like he finally realized tonight that the man that is inhabiting the spider is ignorant of its devious ways. Like he didn't realize too that like Peter Parker is subdued by like the spider in Spider-Man, and so that's why like as he gets up, he starts like kind of like feeling bad for him.
He actually has another. It's kind of like the Mary Jane Peter moment here. A tender moment. Kraven walks up to Spider-Man and says, you like Daryl was saying,
there's still a world out there for you to torture and feed upon, entrails to chew up, minds to spit out. But you know that you no longer have Kraven in your power, and that not only scares you, it saddens you in some strange, inexplicable way. It saddens me too.
And he starts pressing him like Mary Jane was before. And
Spider-Man hits his hand away. He's like, "You recoil. Why? Does my affection embarrass you? No, it's not that. It's just that the game isn't quite done. Not yet.
And again, I can't stress enough, he's not saying
Yeah,
he's thinking this.
So
we are reading this, but Spider-Man doesn't know what's
under
going
Spider-Man's
on.
chin, like very gently, like as if he was like looking
so
upon
what's-
his face.
So after that crazy, unexpected plan where he gets buried alive and Kraven tried to beat him, he comes back. Kraven jumps on an elephant, and starts roaring, and then after he knocks him off the elephant, Kraven just starts pressing his face like, "Oh yes."
But I love that Kraven's like, now he's finally got to a point, now that he's become Spider-Man, he's like, oh, I'm sympathetic to Peter Parker because like he doesn't like realize that the spider has lost itself to me. Like the god that you're like following, that you're like in the whims of, it's lost to me. And like you don't realize that.
And so then it's not enough to display, it narrates, it's not enough to display the truth. The truth will be set free, experience firsthand. So then he releases Vermin. And
he immediately starts yelling at Vermin like, "You remember Spider-Man beat the shit out of you? Didn't that suck so bad? Don't you want to beat him up now?"
Yeah, so
hurt him back, Vermin. You owe it to yourself, to all of us. Hurt him back. Hurt him.
And Spider-Man's like, "You expect me to fight with him for your amusement?" And he's like, "No, for my emancipation."
Yeah, and as the two are fighting, Kraven thinks himself, "Their so long thoughts, so long elusive, will be restored." And as they're fighting, he thinks, "How old I suddenly feel, how unutterably tired." The game was a good one, man to spider, spider to man, but it was so very, very long.
And he must be pretty old if his family was kicked out by the...
He says he's like 70.
Yeah, because there's herbs and stuff, he kept himself young.
Right, because this is the 80s, right? And then like the Russian Revolution was like 1919 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, as Spider-Man's fighting Vermin, he says, "He shot me, he buried me. You know, it's like a stupid, disgusting animal. You know what that's like." So
it's like Mary Jane in the beginning, who was like, "You filthy animal!" She beat the rat with her shoe.
But then he says, "No." Like he just make Mary Jane. He records of what he's doing, and he says, "No, I'm not gonna kill him for you." Basically.
And during that whole thing, there's like this long pause where the narration is, "They said my mother was," and that's when there's a panel of a rat and a spider like staring at each other scared, and then Spider-Man chooses not to kill Vermin or beat him up, and then the rat squishes the spider and Kraven stares at him. Vermin attacks Spider-Man. Vermin attacks Spider-Man. They fight a little, and then the narration is completed, and Kraven thinks was insane.
Yeah. And then the rat starts eating the spider, and at the same time Vermin is like, "I'm gonna eat you alive, Spider-Man," and he's on top of him.
Yeah, and Kraven
a whip comes out and snap, and he's like, "No!" And it's Kraven, and he throws a dagger into Vermin's hand to stick him to the nearby rhino. And it's like, "The point has been made. Your work is done." Like he didn't want him to kill him, and he says, "Just get out of here."
Yeah, so
I love this. This is like the ultimate defeat of a superhero, is to have them lose to someone that you beat, and then to save them and be like, "See, you would have died, but I saved your life. Fuck you. I'm better
and
than
then
you."
he lets Vermin go eat more people. It's great.
This really is like the ultimate victory over a superhero. Like, killing them is not enough. This is way worse.
Yeah.
But it's funny because Spider-Man doesn't really understand what's happening. It's just like, Kraven's just like, "I did it. Boom. It's done." And Spider-Man's just like, just super confused. He's been out for 2 weeks. He's still a little groggy.
And Kraven like helps him up.
Yeah, he says the spider's alive in him. There will be undoubtedly others.
No, he thinks.
Yeah, he thinks. Yes, he thinks. Spider's alive in him. There will be undoubtedly be others to rise up in opposition. But it's no longer my concern. My spider is gone. Now there's only a man, a good man. I think. How strange I have been able to see that until now. No matter. If one such as Kraven can give blessing, I do see.
Yeah, I do see. And seeing Spider-Man, I thank you and I bless you. If one such as Kraven can give blessings, and Spider-Man's just like, "Kraven, I don't understand."
Yeah, he's helping him up. And he's like, "There's one final thing I see, something that I don't think I was capable of seeing till now. Every man has a spider, and perhaps I've been yours." As he thinks as he's helping Spider-Man up.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
he says,
and he's like, "Just go."
Yeah,
he's like,
"Go after Vermin."
Yeah. And Kraven's like, "Oh, go while you're ruining lives with your crazy shenanigans." And Kraven's like, "Don't worry, I give you my word. From this moment forward, Kraven Hunter will never hunt again."
And Spider-Man goes, "I'll be back." He jumps out the window.
And he's like, "I don't doubt it." He thinks in the narration.
Every man, every woman, every nation, every age has its spider. You have been mine. What a burden. What an honor. And he goes outside in the rain. You see Spider-Man going through the sewers and stuff. And Kraven in his narration starts saying goodbye. He says, "How calm I feel, how peaceful." He goes, and we see the grave of Spider-Man that's ripped open now. He looks at the picture of his mom and dad and him as a kid. All these years, fleeing Russia, suffocating in America, finding release, finding honor in the jungle. all these years, and I've never known peace or calm or that elusive thing called happiness.
And a lot of this narration has been used previously.
Yes, it's repeated from earlier in the issue.
Yeah.
But I feel as if I can know it now, that it's nearby. Just outside, like we said before, hidden in the patter of the rain, the drumbeat of the thunder, peace, calm, happiness, an ending. And he pulls out a rifle.
Out of the coffin that he used to have the suit in.
They said my mother was insane, and he puts the rifle in his mouth and kills himself.
Lightning strikes Coom at the same time as the gunshot happens.
Yeah.
And he falls
and it shows you like the blood against the window and the blood against the coffin and his body just laying in the coffin. So it's like, he killed himself. It's not just like the lightning strikes and then you're like, what happened? It's like, no, he killed himself.
This actually
the issue ends with the blood dripping over the picture of him as a young boy with his parents.
And this actually caused a lot of controversy at the time, where people were like, "Wow, James DeMatteis glorifying suicide. Look at this fucking monster."
Yeah, I can see that.
There's actually to the point that Jim DeMatteis actually wrote another story called "Soul of the Hunter," which has never been collected. It actually has like Kraven's spear show up, basically just as a way for Marvel to be like, "Hey, Kraven's soul went to hell because." he fucking killed himself. Don't kill yourself, kid. Don't kill yourself, kids, please.
Oh my god, that's so dumb.
I actually think that story's got a lot of cool writing in it.
I think what sucks about this is like, you don't want to glorify suicide for kids especially, but it's like they're also not glorifying like drugging people and putting them in the ground. Like all of this is like stuff you should not do. But,
I know, but it's always this fucking thing where people always over misread like obviously Kraven's the fucking bad guy here. He's fucking
yeah. I think it's more that like it's viewed as like he achieved his honor and this is his honorable exit, like his seppuku.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I don't know. I never read it as like this is what you should do.
No, but I could see it. The problem is that you have a villain being like, I've never found a thing called happiness, but here it is, a gun in my mouth. Like you could see that.
But so controversy aside, and like that interpretation out, how did you guys read this? Because there's still one issue left, but like this is like the moment of the story.
Yeah, this is the climax.
People remember. Yeah. I when I first read this, I was like I was pretty blown away by this choice, and I think it's really good.
Well, it's hard for me because I'm like, I know this is called Kraven's Last Hunt, and so like this wasn't unexpected. I feel like when you guys are always like, these comic stories are really good, it's that I don't expect weird comic like bullshit out of it a lot of the time.
Okay.
I expect it to be more of, like a long Halloween type of story where it's like, it's definitely more serious and there's like bigger stakes. Like him killing himself here, it felt like a logical conclusion to the story with like how tired he was. Because it's like, the stories never was about like Spider-Man accidentally killing him or something. It was about like him wanting to achieve happiness by beating Spider-Man. He beat Spider-Man, and so he's like, I got nothing left to hunt. Like, what is the point of my life right now? And it's like, it makes sense. It's definitely like really dark, and it gets like, I can see the controversy of this. Anytime you're gonna have like someone commit suicide and be like, I finally like, this is the only way, like, he doesn't say like this is the only way out, but again, it's like there's that tie with like the happiness. I never found happiness in life. It can definitely be a bit, I don't want to say like where you like pull at your collar, you're like, ooh boy, it's a bold way to end this comic.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I also thought it was the logical conclusion. I wasn't that surprised either, because he earlier was like, I'm so tired of this life that I'm like, it's not that crazy to me that he did this. But I thought it was like we said, like a logical kind of end for his story arc, being like he was never happy. He thought this world had kind of gone to shit and kind of defeated the person he thought was like the idea of what was responsible partially for it.
Interesting.
So yeah.
So Phil, you want to take us away?
Yeah, this last issue I was like, why is this still going on? Honestly, after issue 5,
it's more like an epilogue. I felt like.
Yeah,
it definitely is an epilogue. And I felt the same way as soon as this issue showed up. I was kind of like, without Kraven, what's the point of it?
Yeah, I did the same thing. I'm like, after reading it, I'm like, okay, it is to wrap up, but like,
I did like it.
Yeah. So 6, the cover is Vermin and Spider-Man fighting in the sewers. And it starts out with Spider-Man crawling through the sewers, and it keeps cutting between him crawling in the sewers and him in the coffin, because being in a dark, closed space just reminds him of when he woke up buried alive, which is traumatic.
And now we're still getting cuts. We're starting to get cuts again of that guy digging the grave.
Yeah. Yes. And so Oh yeah, and before that we found out that was one of Kraven's like workers, like, servants or something.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. As he's saying the same narration he said before, like I want to be where it's warm, where it's safe. And he's like, it's so dark and you're so dark. Let me out. I'm so afraid. And even the tunnel he's going through is similar to the tunnel he was when he was a spider before he came out of the spider cocoon.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I'm not dead. I'm not dead. I'm not dead. It's him digging out of the dirt.
And then he finally comes out of like a sewer pipe.
Yeah. I don't want to be here, but I have to because Vermin's here. I can't let him run loose. And so, yeah, basically the rats start swarming him, which I'm like, this is a very strong power, actually.
Yes.
And they're basically just jumping all over him. And at the same time, the gravedigger now
they see him like put a person in a Spider-Man costume into a coffin.
Yes. Yeah.
Which again, like I like because it's like it that perfect juxtaposition of how it fits the narration, what's going on. Because Spider-Man, like the rats are biting him, and he's like, "Oh no, they're like maggots. They're gonna drag me back down." As they're putting Kraven into the coffin.
Yeah, so he's still having his own fear about being put in the coffin while Spider-Man is being lowered inside a coffin.
But it's great imagery too because he's dressed as Spider-Man, so you can see it like both ways. That's like Spider-Man within the coffin too.
We get some kind of backstory about Vermin here, about being mutated and experimented on until he turned into this.
He was experimented on by Baron Zemo, and I'm like, God damn, I know who that is.
Yeah.
Doctor Strange's arch nemesis,
that's Baron Mordo.
Baron Mordo.
Baron Mordo.
Baron Zemo is Captain America.
Baron Zemo's the Captain America villain. He's got like a purple hood.
He was technically in Captain America 3. He was the bad guy in Captain America 3, the movie.
No, that's Helmut Zemo, his son.
Same. Fuck you. Right now you're being pedantic, right?
Oh, you guys are right. A little bit of knowledge is a curse.
You're like, how many barons could there be in modern America in Marvel?
Well, this was
they're always foreign.
Most of them were created in the 60s, and so they were crazy back then to stop barons around.
Oh, there's a baron in the White House right now. Yeah. He's just a little boy, though.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Okay, so then
I was experimented on by Baron Trump.
He's crawling through the sewers. At the same time, we get a cut to the cops at Kraven's manor, and they're like, this place belonged to Kraven, and he left us a confession. And he basically has pictures of himself in the Spider-Man outfit over Spider-Man's body.
Yeah, he fully confessed to everything. Pictures, information, everything happened. He basically wanted to say, don't blame Spider-Man for what I did. It was me the whole time.
Yeah. Well, no, but I understand, like, if his whole thing was, like, I needed to be the best, I could see him being like, I want the world to know that was me that did all this.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
It's plausible.
Yeah.
Yep. Then Spider-Man eventually runs into Vermin Vermin crawls out of the sewage and jumps on him. And
I like that he says, like, what's the matter, Vermin? Something caught in your throat. As Vermin's like, ah. And he's like, why am I doing this? And I like that the narration's like, still stupid, useless jokes.
Yeah. And so now he starts getting imagery as he's fighting him. He's getting imagery of him reaching out of the dirt when he's buried alive.
He's being held under the sewage in the water, and as he's reaching up to get out of the water, he's also reaching up through the dirt because it's the same. It's triggering the same feeling of being buried.
Yeah, good parallelism.
And his narration says, "I'm not dead," and he continues fighting Vermin. I'm not dead, but what if I am? What if it wasn't a drug? What if I really never came? What if I'm still down there? What if I really am? I'm not. And he's having his internal monologue. He's fighting a Vermin.
I loved this too. I was like, I wish this is how they ended it. That he was actually in the coffin dead this whole time.
That'd be dumb.
Really. That would be dumb. But
so Vermin's like, Spider-Man goes into the corner and hides, and Vermin's freaking out. It's like, hide from me, I'll find you, but you're not gonna hurt me again. You're gonna hurt me, hit me,
Everybody hurts me. Everybody hurts me.
Yeah,
it's not my fault I get
me.
hungry.
I'm fed up with this world.
Yeah.
Spider-Man starts feeling bad. He webs him up. He's like, it was Kraven that was doing this to you, that was beating you up and stuff. It's like, listen to me, Vermin. I don't want to hurt you. I don't. He's like, no, I want to stop your hurt. Ew, that would be nice. I want to take you up out of the darkness. He's like, no, not out of the darkness. No. He starts attacking him again.
Also, great narration here when he's like, Peter saying to himself, remember, he didn't ask for this. Zemo did this to him. There's a man buried in there. And then it cuts again to buried, alive. He's buried. There's a man buried in this monster.
It's so good.
I just noticed. So he's like, the light's terrible. It's warm. It's terrible. He starts attacking Spider-Man again. So Spider-Man wants to go back to the light where it's warm, and he hates the dark. He says, I don't want to be here. It's so dark. So Vermin's the opposite. He wants to be in the dark, not the light.
Yeah, issue 2 had him being like, the dark is so warm and comforting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the entire story up to this point has been all at night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're about to hit the first daytime scene that we've had.
So Spider-Man goes and leaves and goes like up outside, and Vermin's like, up there, he's up there, should I? Of course I should. And he goes out into the light, and then it's too bright, there's all these cars driving around, and then a truck's about to hit him, but Spider-Man swings by and saves him, and then drops him off in front of the cops and webs him up.
Yeah.
And they're like, wow, Spider-Man.
The cops say, heck of a thing, after all Kraven did to him. Look at him, he managed to capture this guy, and they're like, Spider-Man does his whip swing away, like, how can he know what Kraven did? And
but the thing that I like about that, as silly as it sounds, is he's like, how can they know? And he's like, oh, well, I suppose I'll find out later, but I need to do something else first. And he goes back home to MJ.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He sees her, I'm home, and then it cuts to the funeral with Kraven's goons there.
The sun is rising or setting, but it probably rises.
It's rising.
Yeah.
And when they start to bury the coffin, there's the rat and the spider are both in it getting buried together.
And the panels are exactly the same as when Spider-Man's being buried. And
except there's a rat now.
Yeah, and now it says...
And the grave digger, instead of digging the grave, now he starts to shovel the dirt on top of it, and it says, here lies Sergei Kravenov, Kraven the Hunter. He died with honor. And then it ends with that line from the poem, Spider, spider, burning bright in the forests of the night. What a mortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry. And then it ends.
Yeah.
Boom.
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 This story sucked.
Fuck
you. Twist ending.
I fucking hated it.
It was great. I really liked it. Very cohesive, very tight, interesting. Yeah. I was thinking too, like how it is similar to like that British invasion story, but without like the very strong undercurrent of like fuck America and fuck American politics. Instead, it was like American politics brought me here, but like it was way more about like the actual struggle between the hunter and the man.
Yes.
Or the hunter and the spider, I should say.
It has political undertones, but it's a character-driven story, which is why
yes, very much so. Yeah. That was great.
Yeah,
I liked it a lot.
It is very good. Like probably one of the best Spider-Man story I've read, I think.
It's my favorite of all of them. So
it's definitely up there for me.
So
Top 5 for sure.
I mean, it's no Spider-Man Reign, but...
Fuck yeah.
But what is, huh?
Alright,
So just like Kraven was buried in the...
No, just like Kraven put a gun to his mouth, we're putting a gun to our mouth now, too.
Oh,
Jesus.
man.
We realize the glory of
use
suicide.
That imagery.
We use it. We learned the glory of suicide through the story thanks to James DeMatteis, right, guys?
Oh my god.
No.
I mean, we've never known peace or calm or that elusive thing called happiness.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can find an ending.
The big thing is that we decided this back like before even this year began. We had talked about this and we got together and we're like,
yes.
Do we want to continue making the show? And a big thing is like, even though it's great to give you guys episodes and to like show you our thoughts and processes on this, anytime you do something for a while, it goes from like a hobby to being work. And we were talking about whether or not this is like something we just want to continue in perpetuity or not, or if we want to like move on or do other things or spend our time differently. Because surprise, doing a podcast is pretty time consuming, both like the reading it and talking about this and then editing it and then coming up with like what we do next and then managing between like the network and the show and stuff. And
for me too, one thing that I just wanted to like, I wanted to take stock on for like the premise of the show has been for several years now is that you guys don't know anything and we know everything more or less, and we're trying to get these fresh perspectives. But as we saw, like this episode was a good example about how that premise is wearing kind of thin, I think, because you guys know enough now that I don't think it is that anymore. It's more like filling in more specific gaps. And we also, Sly and I and Daryl and Phil have chosen things in the past too, but we've kind of hit almost everything we really, really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Like
all the major tent poles that would be good in our format.
Yeah, like one major problem with this format is to do like our favorite runs of all time. It's like, we touched about The Flash, the month. Most of our favorite stories are like stuff after years of payoff. Like you read 100 issues and you get to like this story that pays off all the stuff you love, like the Avengers Endgame, Infinity War, of that particular run. So that like
and we were able to do that with 52.
Yeah.
And for me, like 52 is the like pinnacle of the DC universe, which is like where I'm a big DC guy, and like after doing 52, I was kind of like, wow, I've kind of have covered if I was to set up a canon for like how to get into comics, I feel like if you were to listen to the show, you would kind of hit everything I would have suggested, you know?
I mean,
and it got old kind of reading shitty comics and being like, can't believe comics do this. Because I'm at the point now where, as much as I joke about it, when I see dumb comic shit, I'm like, comics in general are still good. It's just like there's dumb shit, and that's why I'm the non-fan of the show with Daryl, but I'm like, I am mostly a fan of the stuff we read.
See, I still like reading those and hearing like everyone's opinions, especially like when Sly reads something bad and like shits on it. It's like that's really fun too.
But he'll do that whether or not we're recording.
So the good news is we're gonna get some of that next week.
Oh my god!
So this is not our last episode.
This is not our last episode.
We have one more episode in this before we wrap up.
Yes, and we'll also be releasing all the Patreon episodes
over the course of
the next few weeks, right?
Next week, every day will be a collection of our Patreon episodes based on topics. So not chronologically, but if you want to see all of Jimmy Olsen episodes in one bunch, you can do that here.
Yes. And for those of you guys who were supporting the Patreon, we really do appreciate that. It helped us keep the actual stream, like I forget what you call the site, the website.
Yeah,
what do you call that thing?
We have to pay for server hosting.
Yeah. And to everyone, I don't want to, like, I know people have suggested episodes like over for forever since the very, very beginning.
Yes, yeah.
And like, if it wasn't for the constant back and forth that I got from so many great listeners for so long, and like how active our Discord has become, and the Facebook group, and like, and all that kind of stuff, like, I don't want you to think that it's like we're like abandoning that. Like, I'm still going to be very active in all those communities and everything, more so on Discord, just because like Facebook's a dumpster hole that I try to never go on anymore. But like, I would have personally wanted to wrap up way longer ago.
Yes.
If it wasn't for that, because like, I never really viewed this as a forever kind of thing. I kind of wanted it to be, especially after we got Phil and Daryl, it was kind of like, I wanted to lay out a case. Like, I always viewed this show as like, if you like the concept of superheroes or comic books as a medium, but are intimidated by the backlog, and like, or if like me, when I first started watching superhero movies, I didn't read comics yet, and I had Sly and Joe feeding me recommendation lists and things where I should go, and I kind of wanted to set up a timeline of a podcast where it would be like, if you were like me, like, I would have loved this show when I was getting into comics, and I feel like we have laid all that out enough, and like, having the community let me get a lot more comfortable and confident in getting deeper than I had planned. Like, I never would have dreamed we would have done all of 52, or like that 4-part Flash saga, or Bleach, like things that I found to be incredibly ambitious that like I never would have done, or even like humored the idea of, if I didn't feel like we had a support web that made it worth it to put in that kind of effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we made Oops, we were actually debating whether we should end Divisive, actually.
Yes.
Also type politics. And it was you guys, fans.
And that was like 3 years ago.
Surprise, it was the Trump election that brought us to whether or not covering comics would be fun anymore, or if we should just start informing people of the real shit in the world.
So if you guys are thinking like, there's more support you could have shown, no, you guys kept the show alive for 3 more years to your support. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I think it's clear from this episode that like, it's not because we all hate each other or like can't work together anymore. You know, like that's another thing too, is it's with any creative project, there's so much work, and it can be so difficult, especially when we've already run through the like huge, like most of the huge list of books that Sly and I picked to cover like years ago. Like, we've pretty much hit all the major ones we wanted to, that we didn't want to have to force it and then grow to resent the project. Because like, I still like am immensely proud of the work we've done, and it's still so much fun to do, but I feel like we should, you know, it's a good time to move on to bigger and better things, especially with like, you guys are, you know, DM It All is like incredible. The amount of work that you guys put in and the response to it has blown me away. And like, I think like that kind of work is, you know, where I think the talents and abilities that you guys have, I think, are better suited than trying to remember the difference between Baron Mordo and Baron Zemo.
And Ryan also is also focusing on his own band now, which he hasn't done for a while. So
I'm between 33 and a Third Under 45, my other podcast, and Premium Heart, my new band. I'm focusing like, I need time for that kind of thing, because that requires a lot of physical effort in the meat space, not just on the internet.
Yes.
So that's definitely a factor too, as we are going into lots of other creative projects. And Phil, what do you have to do? Rot in hell forever or something? Is that the only thing you have going on?
Teaching takes a lot of my free time up. I try to, it's not super creative, but it just takes
a lot of times we had to like schedule around Phil because he's like, no, I gotta do this after school. No, I gotta do this. Yeah. And then the one day he has free, we're like, you gotta read Ultimatum.
A lot of times I'm like in between classes, I'm on my phone trying to fucking read some comic and like zooming in so I can get it done before we get home.
Yeah.
But
so he'll appreciate the free time.
Yeah, and it's not like we're like, oh, we value everything else so much more than this. Like, I don't want to send that message at all, but it's just like, if you are a fan of our work and like what we've been doing, we're not going away anywhere. We're still in these communities. We still have other work.
One of the big things I'd want to say too is I found this show very valuable in both like getting me to read more comics, but also it's a great learning process for me. And I feel like you guys are very informative. Where Ryan, you said like you had completed, and we talked about this when we were first discussing whether or not to end the show, about like that you kind of did what you wanted to here, where it's like you covered a lot of the major beats that you want to, and that like the show has changed from like two idiots that don't know anything about this to two idiots that know too much or half as much. And my thing is like I feel like the show's always interesting to me to be on, because I always have things to learn about, like again, like here, like talking about DeMatteis or talking about like this artist or what Spider-Man was like at this time, or that this wasn't the symbiote suit. It's like I'm always being informed, and that was one of my favorite things about the show, is just how much of a well of knowledge you and Sly are in comics, that like I could come to you for like anything and be like, oh, what about this or what about that? Like I've been playing the PS4 Spider-Man recently, and I came to Sly, or I asked like our group, it's like, so is Black Cat basically just Catwoman? And then Sly immediately like responds with like this huge thing about like, here's who Black Cat is. They were actually in a relationship one time, and then she left him when she found out his secret identity. And it's very valuable and interesting, and I've enjoyed my time here.
I've really liked reading all these classic comics too, like stuff that I probably wouldn't have read. Like when I mentioned this on the show before, but when like we were in like middle school, Sly would always just be like, "Hey, you got to read this Fantastic Four run or this Spider-Man run," and it was like one of those things I probably wouldn't seek out on my own because I'm just not as into comics as other things. But I'm glad to have read it, to have had a reason to go and say, I'm going to read, this weird Kraven thing that I've never heard of before.
Yeah, who's Kraven? Who cares? Yeah. And then you read it and you're like, I can't believe he died. Rest in peace, Kraven.
He died with honor.
He died with honor.
Right.
And in that same vein, like the one of the reasons why too, like when I said like I wanted to get out when we were all still like really having a lot of fun and stuff, is we want like we were not, a lot of podcasts are formed from people that want to make a podcast together, but we were always first and foremost really good friends. And I would be very, very surprised if, I mean, like you guys already do DM it all together, but I would be very, very surprised if we aren't like collaborating on future things every once in a while, like just because like we're all creative types and we all are doing, like we always want to do new things. So this also, and we've had some ideas and stuff that we've thought about or debated about doing, and like whether it be all four of us or in different small subgroups, but it's very difficult to have the time for those kind of projects when we, like Daryl said, editing and recording and reading all these things, like for Divisive, which is a rather long, the episodes are pretty long.
Yes.
We don't have a lot of time to explore other avenues. And so as far as things like the website and the feed and all those things go, like I don't plan to close out the website anytime soon, so it's not like you have to mass download all these episodes if you're worried if you ever want to do a future read or listen through, like they're still going to be active. And on, like, keep your eyes on the Franz Radio website, not only like, and if you follow any of our other work, like if you follow us on Twitter and stuff, we will, like, I'll mention these things or in our Discord or anything. Like, it's not like I expect you to just check the website every day hoping that maybe we do something.
Yes.
But like the website will still be active, and if you are interested in future projects from us, make sure you just like stay in those spaces, and so there will still be opportunity to hear content from us in the future.
Like Ryan said, they're not going down, still going to be active. We have Ryan's podcast about his personal feelings about music. We had Daryl yearly does a show of his brother and siblings about NaNoWriMo when he writes, and like Ryan suggested, we don't want to commit to anything right now, but the site's always gonna be up. If we want to do a project in the future, it'll be there for us, and we'll always be on the site and on our Facebook groups if you want to talk to us.
Yeah, and for Twitter handles, like if you want to follow me for updates, mine's at StoopKidLivesOn. And Daryl, you're Dobu_GM, right?
Yes, DOBU_GM.
And Sly, you're Sly Stories?
Yes. Or DM it all if you want to follow.
Yeah, or DM
I feel like, when Sly does Twitter, it's going to be DM it all, probably.
Yeah, okay.
And Phil doesn't have a Twitter account, so you have
Twitter.
You just have to trust. You have to hear about him through us.
Phil randomly come on to our Facebook group and be like, "Look at this bullshit thing that happened in the news." Like, that's where you'll see him.
Yeah. Or like occasionally Phil will pop up in the Discord and just be like, "Fuck you guys."
Oh, I see people talking about Fire Emblem. I'm like, okay, this is. I have something to say about this.
Talk about games. Talk about strategy RPGs and RPGs in general, and you'll probably get Phil to talk to you.
Yeah, you can learn them out that way. That's
any strategy RPG, I'm unable to not talk about. So
and just really, really heartfelt thanks to everyone who listened and supported us and talked to us for the last 4 years. It's been that's a really long time to do anything. I don't know if I've ever had a creative project
to
run
do
for
something
that long.
like every week to every 2 weeks that we were.
And I will say, I was probably the least. I talked the least on the social media stuff, like on Facebook and stuff, commenting about things. But I will say, even though I didn't comment about it, when I was getting tired of the show, but I would see people in the group talking about our latest episode and their thoughts on it, I was like, oh, this actually is a cool thing we do that interacts with other people. Or when I would see people in person, like, you know, John Marie or whatever, and he's like, I was listening to this, and I'm like, oh yeah, people actually listen to this. And, you know, I did always appreciate that.
I think that's why like a lot of shows end up like spiraling down and stuff, is you don't get a lot of people like to interact with, so you're just like, I'm doing this for nobody. It was always neat knowing that we were doing this for people.
Yeah. So we have one more episode left in 2 weeks, and next week, like Sly said, it's all the Patreon stuff, and it will be a very, very special episode. The plan, we haven't recorded yet, so I hope this works out. But the plan is that we will be discussing David Finch and Jeff Loeb's masterpiece that spiraled the Ultimate Universe into everyone's hearts for eternity, Ultimatum. And we will be bringing back our beloved Joe. To round it out the way we began.
It's like an event for our comic podcast where we're resetting the timeline.
Well, he's like Barry Allen. We're pulling him out of the Speed Force, and instead of the Speed Force, it's like real life, and we're bringing him to here. And we're like,
just like Barry Allen, bringing back Joe is the end of the entire universe.
And we're doing an Ultimatum, obviously it's an ending story for the Ultimate Universe. But also, this podcast was started basically single-handedly by Mark Millar. So now we're
special thanks to Mark Millar for being a shithead.
You asshole.
And so, like, the Ultimate is not by Mark Millar, but it's Jeff Loeb shitting on everything Mark Millar ever built. So
yes,
it's very appropriate.
So thank you all for listening to Divisive Issues. I've been dead and buried on my honeymoon.
I'm out of my mind.
I've been trying to find happiness just outside, perhaps, hidden in the patter of the rain, the drumbeat of the thunder.
And I've been a spider burning bright in the forest of the night. What a moral hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry.
Stay in continuity.